The FIA just exposed something Mercedes never planned to make public. And we are only days away from the Australian Grand Prix, the season opener. The moment where months of secrecy collide with reality. Buried inside official documents are details about engine mapping changes, torque delivery adjustments, and energy deployment refinements for the W17. Not a visible upgrade. Not a new engine block. Something more dangerous. Software precision. Here is why that should grab your attention. Last season, the majority of overtakes in the top field were decided in the first lap. More than half of race outcomes were shaped before the field even settled into rhythm. And in Bahrain testing, George Russell admitted their practice starts were the worst of his career. At the same time, FIA filings confirm Mercedes refined launch torque curves and electrical deployment strategies for Melbourne. That is not a minor tweak. That is a targeted correction. Because Red Bull looked dominant in straight-line energy release. Ferrari looked composed on long runs. Mercedes did not redesign the car. They reprogrammed how it delivers power. And in modern Formula One, a cleaner launch can be worth tenths instantly. Tenths become grid positions. Grid positions become track position. Track position becomes race control. So the real question is not whether Mercedes improved. The real question is whether they just eliminated the one weakness that testing exposed. If they did, Australia changes everything. If they did not, the championship pressure begins from lap 1. Stay with me. Because what the FIA revealed about Mercedes' engine behavior could reshape the fight at the very front before the first corner even arrives. Mercedes is not bringing a brand new engine to Australia. And that is exactly what makes this so serious. Because when a team keeps the hardware the same but changes how it behaves, it means they found something specific. Something that needed fixing. The W17 already revealed its major aerodynamic shift in Bahrain. Redesigned side pods. A tighter engine cover. A heavily revised floor around the rear tires. That was the visible transformation. Australia is about what you cannot see. Engine maps. Torque curves. Energy deployment timing. The invisible choreography between the internal combustion engine and the electrical system. And that choreography decides everything at the start. Under the current regulations, the launch phase is brutally sensitive. These cars deliver massive torque instantly. Electrical boost must blend seamlessly with combustion power. If that transition is even slightly off, traction disappears. If the torque spike arrives too aggressively, the rear tires light up. If it arrives too softly, momentum dies. That is exactly why George Russell admitted the starts in Bahrain were unacceptable. Worse than anything he had experienced before. That is not frustration. That is a red flag. So Mercedes responded. They refined the internal combustion mapping. They adjusted how electrical energy feeds into the drivetrain during the first meters. They optimized the torque delivery window at launch. They recalibrated overtaking mode transitions under the new aerodynamic rules. Not to increase peak horsepower, but to control how power arrives. Because in modern Formula One, control equals confidence. And confidence equals aggression. But here is the tension. In Bahrain, Red Bull appeared extremely efficient in straight-line energy deployment. Not dramatic, but enough to consistently edge ahead at the end of long straights. Ferrari looked stable on long runs. Which means Mercedes cannot simply smooth power delivery. They must smooth it without sacrificing straight-line bite. That balance is delicate. Fix the launch, but keep peak deployment strong. Improve traction, but protect reliability. Because let us not forget, there was already a minor power unit concern during testing. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to reduce ideal mileage. That means validation time was limited. And Australia becomes the first true stress test. Albert Park demands precision. Heavy braking zones. Sharp traction exits. Medium-length straights where deployment efficiency defines overtaking potential. If Mercedes launches cleanly and holds position, strategy opens up. If they lose 2 places before turn 1, they are immediately on the defensive. And defensive racing burns tires. Burn tires burn race pace. So this FIA revelation is not about a dramatic upgrade. It is about a targeted correction. Mercedes identified their biggest vulnerability. And they attacked it before race 1. The question now is simple. Did they eliminate it completely? Or did they only soften it? Because when the lights go out in Melbourne, there will be no hiding. The first 5 seconds will reveal whether the recalibrated engine behavior truly transformed the W17. Or whether one final weakness still separates Mercedes from the front. But here is where the story becomes even more intense. Because fixing the launch is only the first layer. The deeper question is whether Mercedes can sustain that improvement over an entire race distance. Testing in Bahrain gave us hints. On a single lap, the W17 looked competitive. Sharp. responsive, alive. But over longer runs, Red Bull seemed slightly more efficient in energy usage. Ferrari looked composed in tire management. And that combination creates pressure. Because Australia is not a circuit where you can rely purely on raw speed. Albert Park punishes inconsistency. The surface evolves rapidly. Grip levels change session by session. Temperatures shift. And energy deployment must adapt to all of it. So when Mercedes recalibrates engine mapping for better launches, they are also adjusting how energy is harvested and released across a stint. If the launch mapping is aggressive, it increases thermal load. If deployment is optimized for straight-line defense, energy recovery balance changes under braking. Everything connects. Nothing is isolated. And that is where risk lives. Because modern power units operate within incredibly tight limits. Electrical systems must recharge efficiently. Combustion temperatures must remain stable. Cooling must be precise. If even one parameter drifts, performance drops. Or worse, reliability becomes a concern. Remember, there was already a minor power unit issue during testing that cost valuable track time. That does not mean the engine is fragile. But it means the system has not experienced a full race weekend under maximum stress. Australia will provide that stress. Full throttle sections. Heavy traction zones. Constant gear changes. Dirty air. Wheel-to-wheel pressure. If the recalibrated mapping performs under those conditions, Mercedes instantly looks like a genuine threat. If the system struggles under sustained load, weaknesses reappear. And here is the psychological factor. Momentum. The first race shapes perception. If Mercedes launches cleanly, defends confidently, and matches Red Bull's deployment down the straights, belief spreads. Inside the team. Inside the paddock. Inside the fan base. But if there is hesitation, even slight, rivals gain confidence. And confidence in Formula One is dangerous. Because it influences strategy calls. It influences risk-taking. It influences how aggressively drivers attack. So this is not just about engine maps. It is about tone setting. Are Mercedes arriving in Australia as refined contenders? Or as a team still fine-tuning under pressure? Toto Wolff's message has been calm, measured, focused on consolidation rather than revolution. That suggests belief in the foundation. And that foundation is stronger than in previous seasons. Russell himself has said the car does not feel fundamentally flawed. That alone is progress. But progress must translate into performance when it matters most. And in Melbourne, it will matter immediately. When the lights go out, the launch will expose months of engineering decisions. When the field accelerates toward turn 1, we will see whether torque delivery is smooth or nervous. When the cars hit the first straight, deployment efficiency will be visible. And over the first stint, tire behavior will reveal whether harmony truly exists between engine, energy system, and chassis. If everything synchronizes, Mercedes becomes structurally dangerous. Not flashy. Not dramatic. But relentless. If synchronization is incomplete, small gaps remain. And small gaps at the front of Formula One grow quickly. So as we approach the Australian Grand Prix, remember this. The most powerful upgrade is not always a new component. Sometimes it is a refined behavior. A smoother surge. A cleaner launch. A perfectly timed electrical boost. And in a championship that will be decided by tenths, that refinement might be the difference between chasing and leading from the very first race. And this is where everything converges. Because Australia will not just test Mercedes against Red Bull and Ferrari. It will test Mercedes against expectation. All winter, there was quiet confidence inside Brackley. A sense that the worst conceptual mistakes were behind them. That the W17 was not another experimental gamble, but a solid base. A car Russell himself described as fundamentally sound. That matters. When a driver believes in the car, inputs become sharper. Braking becomes later. Throttle application becomes braver. But belief can evaporate in seconds. If the launch hesitation appears again. If straight-line deployment feels slightly weaker. If Red Bull edges ahead effortlessly into turn 1. Confidence shifts instantly. And that shift is not just emotional. It changes development pace. Because if Australia confirms the recalibrated engine behavior works, Mercedes can double down on evolution. They can push aero upgrades aggressively. They can refine race trim with clarity. They can build momentum. But if Melbourne exposes lingering weaknesses, resources may be redirected. Attention may split. Urgency may rise. And urgency, while powerful, can sometimes distort precision. This is why the FIA revelation carries so much weight. It confirms Mercedes chose refinement over reinvention. They did not panic. They did not introduce a risky new hardware specification. They trusted the architecture and focused on eliminating a vulnerability. That vulnerability was the start. and by extension, track position. Track position at Albert Park is not just helpful. It is decisive. Overtaking is possible, but costly. Dirty air affects front-end grip. Tire temperatures spike in traffic. So if Mercedes launches cleanly and defends position, they control rhythm. If they hesitate and fall into the pack, they chase. And chasing in modern Formula One burns energy. Literally. Battery deployment becomes defensive. Recovery cycles become compromised. Strategy windows narrow. Now imagine the opening lap in Melbourne. 5 red lights. Engine screaming at controlled rev limits. Clutch paddles vibrating under fingertips. The rear suspension compressing as torque is released. If the recalibrated mapping is perfect, the car surges forward cleanly. No snap. No bog. Just traction. And that single moment can determine the entire race trajectory. Because from there, everything flows. Strategy freedom. Tire preservation. Energy deployment confidence. But if there is even a fraction of instability, the consequences ripple. 2 positions lost. Dirty air. Compromised first stint. And suddenly, all those careful refinements feel incomplete. That is why this first race feels larger than usual. Not because it crowns a champion, but because it reveals direction. Does Mercedes truly understand how to extract maximum performance from this new era's power unit regulations? Have they synchronized combustion and electrical deployment with the precision required at the front? Or is there still a gap to close? Toto Wolff has projected calm, measured optimism. No dramatic promises. Which suggests the team believes the solution is already within reach. Now the stopwatch will judge. And in a sport decided by margins measured in thousandths, the smallest refinement can create the biggest consequence. When the lights go out in Australia, do not just watch who leads. Watch how they get there. Because in that explosive first phase of acceleration lies the answer to whether Mercedes has truly unlocked its secret advantage, or whether the fight at the front remains just out of reach.